Welcome to Module 1, Session 2, a lesson on linguistic aspects of academic language, brought to you by the University of the District of Columbia's Project FIRST and the Center for Applied Linguistics. In this session, you will read a content-based middle school science text as a warm-up before using that text to analyze the academic language at the discourse, sentence, and word or phrase levels. Next, you will focus on different perspectives on academic language and how we can connect those theories to classroom practice. We will wrap up by reviewing the objectives and end with an assignment. Turn to handout 2.A, California Invasive Plant Council, Invasive Plant Inventory, 2006 to 2010. This text is recommended by the Common Core State Standards as a complex text for students in grades 6 through 8. Read the text, highlighting language that you think would be challenging for students in the middle grades, particularly English learners. Then, turn to a partner and discuss the academic language of the text. How does this relate to what you learned in the lesson on scientific language? Learning objectives. In this session, candidates will be able to identify features of academic language at different linguistic levels. To analyze a science text to identify features of academic language. To connect theoretical models of academic language to classroom practice by reading and presenting an article. And finally, to discuss the use of language or languages in the classroom and in broader society. Turn to handout 2.B, Features of Academic Language. Because the District of Columbia is part of the WIDA Consortium, we are going to examine WIDA's way of looking at academic language. WIDA is a consortium of states and state education agencies, or SEAs, who work on behalf of English learners, or ELLs. They make the annual English Language Proficiency Exam for ELLs called Access for English Language Learners. By understanding the characteristics of academic language from WIDA's perspective, you will be able to support your English learners and other students' language development within the context of your science class. The first level of academic language that we're going to talk about is the discourse level. Discourse is a way of characterizing language beyond the sentence level, either in spoken or written form. For example, someone who studies discourse might look at a whole conversation or a whole written text. There are a number of ways you can help students think about discourse. There are 5 ways shown on this slide. Some of these overlap, and some of them are somewhat distinctive. These 5 aspects of discourse are not meant to be comprehensive, but to help you to think about how to analyze language at the discourse level. The first 3 are ways of characterizing whole chunks of discourse: language functions, genres, and speech events. The last 2, reference and cohesion, are ways of looking at relationships within a text. For example, the relationship between words within a stretch of discourse. Let's look at the first 3 ways to look at and characterize chunks of language. Language functions are the ways that people use language to accomplish something through language. It's how people do things with words. Some common language functions are promising, inviting, or apologizing. These examples of language functions allow a person to accomplish an action through their use of language. In classroom settings, there are also common language functions, such as explaining, comparing, or sequencing. Most teachers have an idea of what makes a good explanation, but not all students may know how to use language to make a good explanation. Teachers may help students learn the appropriate, accepted, and expected ways to use language in this case. Genres are another way to look at discourse. Many of us know about genres from our English classes. Some common genres are narratives, arguments, or procedures. Genre theory supports students' understanding of how to use language to fulfill a communicative purpose. For example, language is used differently in narratives versus arguments. Helping students understand the different ways of structuring language supports their language development. Speech event is a term that is commonly used to talk about oral language use. Oral reports or debates are ways students use oral language in classrooms that have specialized expectations and rules. The last two terms related to the discourse level, reference and cohesion, describe specific ways words or groups of words relate to one another within a text. Reference is the relationship between expressions. For example, pronouns are ways to show reference. He may refer to John or Miguel within a text. We don't always say a person's name. After we mention their name the first time, we use a pronoun instead. For example, John likes soccer. He likes to run. As a native speaker and fluent reader, you likely understood that the he refers to John. Lastly, cohesion is the way ideas tie together in text through special linking words. For example, conversely shows that a comparison is being made. Meanwhile shows that two things are happening at the same time. And because shows a causal relationship. These connective terms can signal distinct meanings within a science text. Now, let's get some practice thinking about the discourse level. Turn back to handout 2.A, the invasive plant inventory that you read earlier. Talk with a partner about the discourse features of the text. Use the questions to guide you along with handout 2.B. The sentence level accounts for the ways words are put together within a sentence or utterance. In natural conversation, people don't really speak in full sentences all the time, so we call those utterances, a string of words that a speaker uses to convey an idea. Grammar refers to the grammatical resources that people use to convey meaning. For example, the way verbs change to show whether an event took place in the past, present, or future. Sentence types refers to the ways phrases and clauses are joined together to make longer or shorter sentences. Grammatical metaphor is the way one grammatical class of words can be transformed to substitute for another. The example here shows that a verb, observe, can be changed into a noun, observation. This is very common in scientific texts and is referred to as nominalization. Turn back to handout 2.A, the invasive plant inventory that you have been analyzing. Talk with a partner about the sentence features of the text. Use the questions along with handout 2.B to guide you. The final aspect of academic language is the word or phrase level. This refers to the vocabulary that is used to convey academic meaning. General everyday terms are the words used to express meaning in everyday settings. They are typically The final aspect of academic language is the word or phrase level. This refers to the vocabulary that is used to convey academic meaning. General everyday vocabulary are the terms used to express meaning in everyday settings. They are typically considered less formal. It's important to note that words that might be everyday for some students might not be for those who speak another language or dialect at home or have different everyday experiences. General academic vocabulary refers to the terms used across academic settings. For example, words like identify and evidence might be used in more than one subject area. Content-specific words are the academic terms used in different content areas. Pythagorean is a term in mathematics. Phylum is used in biology, and nationalism is used in social studies or history. Outside of the content area, these terms would be less common. Multi-word expressions are common recurrent strings of words. For example, rely on and based on, or as a result. Turn back to handout 2.A. the invasive plant inventory that you have been analyzing. Talk with a partner about the word or phrase level features of the text. Use the questions to guide you, along with handout 2.B. Here's a graphic organizer from WIDA about the 3 different aspects of academic language we have discussed. WIDA defines academic language as composed of discourse, sentence, and word or phrase level features. Therefore, analyzing both oral and written language samples for these 3 features can help teachers prepare students for the Access English Language Learners test. To learn more about Access, including the levels of language proficiency outlined by WIDA, the performance indicators, and can-do descriptors, visit their website at wida.us. Turn back to your assignment from Module 1, Session 1. You are each assigned an article. The number 1s read Valdez from 2004, 2s read Scarcella, 2003, 3s read 2 articles by Jim Cummins, and 4s read a 2012 article by Walke and Van Leer. Turn to handout 2.C, Article Poster. You will get into your assigned reading group for the article that you read. This is your expert group. Briefly discuss the main idea of the article you read using handout 2.C to guide your ideas. You will be creating a poster with 4 quadrants: summary points from the article, implications for teaching, examples of academic language or a graphic, and a notable quote or question for discussion that stems from the article. Keep in mind that others in the class have not read your article, and you will each be responsible for sharing out. When you have finished filling in the 4 quadrants poster, take a moment to practice what you want to say to share out the information. Within your expert poster groups, now letter off A through D. You will next move to a new poster and form a new group. A's, go to poster number 1, Valdez. B's, go to poster number 2, Scarcella. C's, go to poster number 3, Cummins. And D's, go to poster number 4, Walke and Van Leer. This is your new group. At least one person in each group should have created the poster in front of you and will be an expert. Have this person explain the reading and their 4 quadrants poster. Turn to handout 2.D so that you can take notes on each article. When time is called, move as a newly formed group to the next poster. You will stay together in this group to visit all the posters. Have that poster's representative explain their article and poster to you. Continue until you have visited each poster, and as an expert, you have shared your article. The next slide has some sentence stems you may want to use as you discuss the posters. As you are presenting your poster, consider using these sentence stems to guide your presentation. You don't need to stick to these sentence stems, but they're there for you if you need a place to start. Linguistically diverse students in your classroom would benefit from these sentence stems to be able to successfully participate in this oral presentation. This is an example of a scaffold to model the forms and expectations of this oral speech event. Let's debrief the traveling jigsaw activity. Before we share out in the larger group, talk at your tables. How could you adapt this traveling jigsaw activity for your students? What were the expectations for language use during this activity? Consider the discourse, sentence, and word level features that you needed to be successful. What about your students? What would they need? What language task or feature from this activity do you expect would be most challenging for your students? And lastly, how could this activity benefit the academic language development of your students in the science content area? Let's continue to discuss the articles you read outlining the theoretical approaches to defining academic language. Turn to handout and answer key 2.D. Get into small groups. Read the quotes from the readings and discuss the guiding questions. What are the implications for teachers of linguistically and culturally diverse students? Turn to handout and answer key 2.D. Stay in your small group discussions. Read the quotes from the Cummins articles and discuss the guiding questions. What are the implications for teachers of linguistically and culturally diverse students? Let's discuss the Valdez article. Turn to Handout and Answer Key 2.D. Stay in your small group discussions. Read the quotes from the readings and discuss the guiding questions. What are the implications for teachers of linguistically and culturally diverse students? Turn to Handout and Answer Key 2.D. Stay in your small group discussions to cover the Van Leer and Walke article. Read the quotes from the reading and discuss the guiding questions. What are the implications for teachers of linguistically and culturally diverse students? There are several implications for teachers from these articles looking at theoretical approaches to academic language. Many teachers identify vocabulary as the largest obstacle for English learners, but in fact, students face language demands at the phrase, sentence, and discourse levels as well, and need instruction on each of these features. As you saw from analyzing the grade level text in Handout 2.A, Invasive Plant Inventory, the features of academic language are prevalent throughout science text. Students need direct attention to academic language development while learning rigorous grade level content. There are numerous definitions of academic language and a variety of perspectives on how best to teach it. While we might expect that ESL teachers are more aware of the role of language in content area learning, mainstream grade level teachers are experts in their content, and as language is embedded in all of the subject areas, there is a need for collaboration between these teachers to benefit linguistically and culturally diverse students. The Common Core State Standards gives us some leverage to explicitly teach language because the standards promote language and literacy acquisition for all students. The A to Z wrap-up activity is a simple, low-prep activity that can be applied in the middle grades classroom. Let's try it. Get into groups of 3 to 4 teacher candidates. Have one teacher candidate, or your students, write the alphabet down the left side of a piece of scrap paper. You will only need one piece of paper per group, but each student should have a pen. Don't begin until I say start, because this is a competition. You will write one word for each letter related to academic language or the instruction of academic language. There should only be one writer at a time, so you will pass the piece of paper like a baton, with each person adding one word. There should not be one single scribe. You can start at any letter. Continue passing the paper around and around until your group has a word or phrase for every letter that relates to academic language or the instruction of academic language. When the first group has 26 words or phrases, yell "language," and then you will read your alphabet to us. Does everyone have the alphabet written down? Okay, start! Tickets out are a great formative assessment for the instructor to learn more about any misconceptions or questions and to inform further instruction. Please write a ticket out with one thing you learned, one activity or approach that you plan to implement as a teacher, and one thing that you still wonder about. Thank you for your participation in today's session.